we collect things all the time when we travel. And sometimes they'll lie around for 30 years. My father gave me a flintlock pistol that was a few hundred years old when we were, 8? So 60 years ago. And then last year, we were asked to make some objects for the Marlborough Gallery. And I had this box, and I suddenly saw it with this flintlock pistol in it, with a tarantula and magnets and heroin bags all around it. And so I made it, and it finally went into a piece of art. But it waited 60 years. That's the difference between branding art, career art, art that's about success and being recognized, and what I think of as true art, which is the life lived. And the life lived can only be assessed at the end. So we've always looked from our deathbed back in terms of trying to evaluate what we've done so far. If that's had some effect on the way in terms of inspiring or encouraging other people, that's fantastic. But we're part of that other continuum that's nothing to do with commerce. That's primarily about seeking consciousness, seeking dimensions that were not given to you by your society or your education or your family, looking for the truths that belong just for you, the ones that you're supposed to find and dig up, and then hold close and treasure. And it can be the simplest things. It could be a matchbox, which made me think of a friend of mine. When he was 18, he got into Brighton College of Art. Little Baz, we called him. And my friend Spidey gave him some hash in a matchbox that the label said England's Glory, which we thought was hilarious at the time. And so little Baz, who always wanted to go to art college, got the train to Brighton, got off the train, got frisked by some cops, arrested, and lost his place at art college because of his England's Glory. So that's that matchbox. I wish I still had that. But that for him should have some really significant energy at this point. You following me? I'm rambling slightly because I'm on fuzzy chemicals.
We love it.
Well, it's really pretty incredible how I've seen your archive before, and when in the old Queens building you lived in, and I always found it pretty amazing how you were able to just hold on to so much that had so much meaning to you over the years. I think most people don't keep that in mind as they're living and are creating. And I remember there was something in the corner, and I was like, "What is that?" And you're like, "Oh, that's just no big deal, like this Burroughs self-portrait or something like that." You know?
Oh yeah, yeah, with the barbed wire and the basketball. Yeah,
but
I got rid of that.
Well, in like regards to
Like Burroughs in Kondo, and Kondo represents all the things about art that I don't like, so I got rid of it.
Right.
Woo! I couldn't be in the house anymore.
But in thinking about your lineage to Burroughs and Geisen, and how you and Jay were inspired by the cut-up method and the idea of the third mind, and applied it to, I like that, it's just thinking about how you applied that to your physical being as opposed to just, the written word or something like that. Can you explain to someone who might not know about Pandrogyny what it means to you at this point?
No, I'll try, you'll try, but everything we do is so interconnected. In 1969, we had what we realized not that long ago was a flicker experience. And that's when we heard voices, and we saw logos and symbols and sentences and even equations. And when we got home, we wrote as many of them down as we could remember. And from Coombe Transmissions grew Throbbing Gristle, and from Throbbing Gristle grew the Temple of Psychic Youth, which was actually the Coombe rituals in that space between when it was TG, I was doing those in private at home, secretly, because I was trying to go further and deeper and further out. And it wasn't the sort of thing that you can do as a performance. It was something that had to be done in a more rigorous setting to try and measure what might happen. So, well, let's see. So there's so many parallel threads in any life. There's the one that when we were born, we didn't think that we were the same species as anyone else. You know, Brian Geisen used to tell me about when he was born. He claimed he remembered it vividly the moment he was born. And he said he was screaming in baby talk. He was actually screaming, "Wrong place, wrong address, send me back." Maybe that's why I can't stand vaginas, because I was so tortured by one when I was born. So this starts really early. We always felt alien. We always felt like we were meant to keep quiet, that we shouldn't say too much about what we were feeling. And then, because at the moment I'm trying to write my autobiography, we got to a point that my mother told me about. When she used to get upset, she'd say, "You never wanted to be with me, did you?" And I'd go, "What do you mean?" She said, "When you were small, when you were about a year old or somewhere there, before you could actually walk, but you were trying to walk," she said, "she took me out to the shops to get some bread and stuff in this big old-fashioned pram. And I was in the pram with one of those leather harnesses strapping me in bondage." And then another connection, maybe that's why I like to be strapped in with bondage, who knows. And then she went in the shop. And while she was in the shop, someone ran in, crying, and said, "Has anybody left a baby outside in a pram? You better come." And my mother went, "I did," and she ran out, and I'd snapped the leather straps, climbed out of one side of the pram, fallen down that side of the pram, slicing open my face and scalp on some of the metal parts, so I was covered in blood, and my toes just touched the floor, and I was going like this, dragging this pram along with me by these straps. And I found nearly half a block before they found me. And I was just about to try and walk into the road dragging it. Want to be with me? You tried to escape. So maybe I did try and escape. But one thing I always knew straight away from that era was that you have to be very careful what you tell people when you're still under their control, whether it's the family or school, the basic social groupings that you're inevitably part of by just where you're born. They don't have your best interests at heart, most of them. They might think they do, but all of them have their own agenda, their own expectations, their own desires for what they want you to become. You know, they give you the names of relatives that you've never met that are dead. You know, we'll name them after Auntie so-and-so. She was nice. We'll name them after Uncle so-and-so. He was a real bastard, but I liked him. And so this weight on you. And the names have meanings and basically programming. And then as you learn language, you're being programmed. The way your family behaves around you is programming. Constantly, you're being programming that you choose, and you've not had a choice about do you even want to consider it. So the greatest liberation there is when you reach the point that you can start to build yourself, as in SLF, big letters, self. And one great way to do that is to change your name and say, from this moment on, I'm going to choose everything I am. I am not what you want. I am not what you hope. I'm not going to work in advertising. I'm not. That's what my mum wanted me to be in advertising. In a way, we are.
Yeah.
So you can finally start, but you have to be so careful, because even when you say 12, 13, 14, you're still legally under the control and the policing and the intimidation of the culture in all its forms. So we always knew that we had to be very careful about telling anyone what we really wanted to become. When we were about 7 or 8 in the bedroom, and my mother was brushing my sister's hair. My sister had really long hair, beautiful hair, and it sounded so sexy when she brushed it, this lovely swish. And we thought, why can't we have long hair and experience having it brushed like that? Why is it only my sister? And that's when gender suddenly struck me as being really unfair. Like, why should that make any difference? Which way I go pee-pee?
Yeah.
You know? So from then on, we had great suspicion about gender and why it was being policed so specifically, pink and blue and all that stuff that used to go on. And then, of course, we went to an all-boys school in England, a private school that was all boys, and then next door was the all-girls school. So even then, up to the age of 18, everything was streamed into the two genders. But my experience of being at a school that was all boys was, these people are dicks. To be one of them? Why? I don't want to behave like that. I don't want to be one of those. Masculinity that was being sold, it really pulsed me. And we did not be part of that society. No society that expected me to behave in such an aberrant, violent, and moronic way, just because they had an extra bit of skin dangling between their legs. You know, what the fuck? So, from then on, it was always clear to me that either or was a big mistake. And there had to be more to the story than that. And that's when you start seeking again. You look, and the thing I found was Burroughs and Geising and the cut-ups, as you said. You know, and when we're looking at that and thinking that it was an amazing tool, but we didn't know how to apply it at first. And then we met Derek Jarman in '69, and we were part of the Gaelic Street Theatre when it was just becoming legal in Britain, and we were doing drag as a political act in the street. And then with Coombe we were doing eventually mainly performances and rituals that were about swapping male-female roles. A lot of the times we would have the wrong outfit or the supposed right outfit on for gender, and then destroy them or change them or swap them. There was a lot of things about the policing of sexuality as well. Like, why is it okay to masturbate at home in my room, but not okay to masturbate in the street? Why? You know, what is it that says it's not okay? Is there a really good reason? Maybe, but who's questioning it? Why isn't anyone questioning it around me? You know, when you start to look at that, nakedness, why is that still an issue, that we have bodies? All of these things, they pile up, and you observe, and then you get back to what we were saying with Nomad, the Shine Apache. We're looking for the story. And what happened, when we met Lady J, the very first day, she dressed me in her clothes. And even bought me shoes at Fluhog with high heels and wove little jewels and little talismans from a Tibetan shop into my dreadlocks, and put me in a bottle green velvet all-in-one bodysuit with a leather miniskirt, and then she took me to an S&M club that night. And she immediately said she saw me as a doll that could be anything. That's what she said. You know, that she could dress me up and I would become whatever she chose. And when she was talking about the malleability of identity, that in fact, none of us are not fixed. We live in a world of chaos and fluidity all the time. The entire universe, the quantum universe, is chaos and fluidity. So everything in it must also be there. You know, we might just be crystallized and formed into this semi-solid object that we call a human body. But really, we're just the same as random molecules flying around, often without any real pattern. It's this strange mystery that people want the either or. It's got to be this or that, black or white, loud or quiet, male or female, Catholic or Jewish, or Muslim, or whatever. It's always this or that, this or that. And what is that? That's a control system. You have to be this or that. You can't be anything else. No in between. Nothing that's a bit different. Nothing that challenges the rules, the social rules. But when you go to India and Nepal and you meet the Agori have a belief system, the path of no distinction. That all value judgments are made by human beings and all are irrelevant. You could go to a restaurant in Paris and have a really expensive meal with frog's legs and snails and chicken, and then you could go to some tribe in New Guinea and you eat big bugs out of a log, and they're both delicacies. But then you could go somewhere else, like Donald Trump's house, and those frog legs and snails would not be what he would want to eat. He would say they were disgusting, because that was not what he was trained to believe was what he wanted to eat. So when you think about it, what is the right answer to what is good food? There is one. Anywhere you go, there's a different answer. The same with clothing, the same with sexual behavior, the same with music and tonalities, the same with whether you have figurative art or whether you can't have figurative art. It goes on and on and on, but the fact is, there are no fixed answers. There never were. And the biggest problem we have with our species is we keep trying to fix a square peg into a round hole.
Yeah.
It won't work. It will only destroy the square peg eventually by breaking the corners off. And it will shatter the round hole by trying to fit in. You can't do it. So our enemy is the either or. And when you look at that and you talk about it, as me and Lady J did, you go, well, what's the really classic either or, male-female? She never felt comfortable feeling pressured to behave as feminine in the traditional social way in the United States. We never felt that we were masculine in the traditional way. She was already taking testosterone when we met her and doing weight training, building up her muscles. And her greatest ambition was to be able to grow facial hair. So we looked at that and we thought, well, if we feel this, we can't be alone. There must be other people who feel this way, and there must be that story in the environment. And lo and behold, we looked at the Village Voice of all things. And in the sex ads at the back, when we first came to New York in '96, the sex ads would be primarily biologically born women giving sexual favors to heterosexual males. But after a few years in New York, we'd look in the back, and it would be chicks with dicks, as it was then, offering services to heterosexual males. So heterosexual males had shifted from the traditional view of a female with a vagina, natural born, to an apparent female with a penis. That's a huge fucking shift. And it happened in a few years. And then we started buying the National Enquirer. And all these stories started to appear of Just Wildenstein, who wanted to look at one of her cats. And Hollywood stars who used to be desperate to keep any cosmetic surgery secret were now selling their stories of having cosmetic surgery and boasting about it and telling you how much they spent. So that's another huge shift. We saw those as stories, the culture, that was saying those two traditional roles are finally crumbling. The male and female roles are inevitably crumbling. That means that there is an evolutionary mutation happening. Excuse me, I just need a bit of water. Now, what myself and Lady J always had, and we've had all my life, was if you have an idea and it makes sense to you, we feel it's our duty to try and manifest it, to do it. You can't go, wouldn't it be interesting if somebody symbolically distorted or erased their either or gender? You think, I guess now we have to destroy and erase our own personal gender. Otherwise, how serious are we? So that's one whole thread coming to that, which was the commitment was really important. The surgeries were mainly about the commitment on one level. The other part was just love. As probably a lot of people here know, we met Jay and we were in love instantly and constantly and unconditionally in the truest sense. We want to literally absorb each other, just hold each other, just become one big blob that was us both as one. And that's where the Burroughs thing of the third mind comes in. We looked at that again, cut ups, and we thought, okay, if when Burroughs and Gysin cut up something they've written together, they say it's not by them anymore, it's the product of the third mind. What we cut and erase our bodies as we receive them together, then it becomes a third being. And that being we called the PANDROGENY, the positive androgyne. And we wanted a word that didn't connect overtly with gender, that didn't still play into the either or language of the time. We wanted a word that didn't have any history or baggage at that time. Something that could just be concept, waiting to be filled by everybody who took interest in it. And that's part of Pandrogyny II, is it's an open idea, an open source, if you like, that everyone can take and play with and fill to the degree they feel comfortable or want. And they're all correct. It can be anything. It doesn't have to have anything to do with gender. It's about identity, but that's a huge topic. So it's also just an expression of the sheer exhilaration of love, that you find through that love the ability to surrender absolutely and into the other person, into the other. And then we start thinking, well, where's the stories for this? You know, why do we want to become a living hermaphrodite if we could? Well, why are we feeling like this? And we searched back, and we got to the Garden of Eden, and Lilith, and Adam, and Eve, and discovered that all the earliest paintings of Eden showed Lilith, Adam, and Eve, and God with breasts, vaginas, and penises. They were all hermaphrodites. And guess who tried to suppress those paintings and destroy them all? The Roman Catholic Church. There are now, as far as we know, there's only 5 original paintings. Because they wanted to erase the message, which was really existing is about returning to a divine state. And the only way to return to that divine state is through absolute, unconditional, loving love, making love, not just making love as in consummating sexually, but making love, this thing, love, this energy, this incredibly abstract, unique part of human beings. We prefer humane because the E adds on evolution. And so all these threads are coming through, and we look back and we realized this, I think it's mentioned in the LA Times, this French guy came over there a few months ago, Nicolas Ballet, and asked me if he could look through some of my old notebooks for his PhD, and we went, yeah, of course. And so he sat on my futon and he was looking through them all, and he goes, do you mind if I scan some? I went, no, of course. You know, it's to share. We don't own it. Poets don't own words, as Brian Geisen said. You know, so he scanned a whole lot of it and he took it away, and then he wrote to me and said, can I publish these as books? And we said, do you want to, really? And he went, yes. I went, well, if you think it's worthwhile and you've got the money to do it, do it. And so he did. We were looking through one with a friend after all that, and came across a page that was a notebook I wrote in 1986. And in it, there's 3 pages about androgyny. And it even says, androgyny is inevitable. Wow. We have no memory of writing it. And there's all these theories in there, and all these little equations and diagrams explaining why this has to happen, why we have to end the either-or, and why gender as male-female is no longer relevant. Lady J came up with a simple explanation for the difference that sometimes helps, which was some people feel they're a man trapped in a woman's body, some people feel they're a woman trapped in a man's body. The PANDROGENY just feels trapped in a body. It's all so simple when you just let go, isn't it? One of Jay's favourite phrases that we love so much was, see a cliff, jump off. And that fearlessness is what's so amazing about her. Incredible. She dragged me into places that we were obviously aware of but hadn't got to, like androgyny. Yeah. You know, we'd been writing it down in my intellectual little way, and we'd reached it in rituals and meditations and so on, but we hadn't understood what we were writing until we met Lady J. And she can simplify things so easily. Like, what's the human body? She goes, The human body is just a cheap suitcase to carry around your mind. Absolutely. Okay. And it's those little maps that are really useful when you can get confused by the millions of threads. You can just go back to those and remember it is that simple. Never be afraid. See a cliff, jump off. And that's what you have to do. You have to decide to prepare to surrender everything. What's the worst that could happen? You starve to death, you die early, whatever, you get murdered by some idiot. If that happens, then you've got no regrets. Any regrets, because everything you've done has been motivated by this pure idea of where you want to go, where you want to realize consciousness, to understand more and share whatever you can understand, because someone else will take it further. It's a chain. You know, art is a chain. Burroughs and Gysin, Gysin made that beautiful statement, wisdom can only be passed on by the touching of hands. And we made a sculpture of it, as you know, Wes. We cast my right arm in bronze and put it on the wall in the Rubin Gallery with a plaque that said, wisdom can only be passed on by the touching of hands. Brian Gysin, please touch the sculpture. And people would hold it and touch it. And it's now been installed permanently this week in the Rubin Museum in the Tibetan Shrine Room.
Yeah. Yeah, it's also in the living room here. You made 3 of them, right?
And hopefully it'll get really shiny over the years.
Right.
We were just thinking of all the Tibetan Buddhist statues that we saw in the Himalayas and how where people would touch them or rub them with their hand or their forehead when they were praying, that they were really shiny. And we just thought it was a really beautiful connection. So, again, it's something we just picked up along the way. It's not a physical object. It became a physical object. But where does it really begin and end? Who knows what thought process Brian went through to say that? And then he said it to me, and I happened to record it on a cassette recorder. And then we kept all those tapes for 30 years before they were published as a book. And now anyone can share that thought. But also Benjamin, who's there, I think. You there, Ben?
Yes.
Hi.
Yeah, he said, because we used to talk about the touching of hands, and it was Ben that said, let's make it, you should just make it. So without him, it wouldn't have been made into an object.
Woo!
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, Ben.
And that's what we started trying to say at the beginning. It's a chain. You pass it along. That's a horrible phrase because there's that movie, isn't there? But in a sense, we're a small bridge, a direct bridge to Brian Gysin and William Burroughs and people, having met and worked with them. But then Ben and you and all the people we've worked with are the bridge to someone else, other people. And then we'll be gone quite soon from the looks of it. But you'll continue being bridges. And that's a really important job. Preserving the ideas and being bridges that share with those who are ready to hear,
Yes. Yes.
Jen, do you want to take some questions from people? Are you into that?
Sure.
Does that sound fun or how?
Get forward with it.
Does anyone have a question they'd like to ask?
Do you have a question back in the back? Can you pass the mic back?
Hello, Jen. Huge
Hello.
fan. As a child, I had bells on my shoes because I kept on escaping the apartment I lived in. So I definitely relate to that. My main question is regards to ritual. In your experience, what would you say is probably the simplest and most powerful ritual everybody or anybody here can do tonight, especially considering it's the 23rd, that you think is probably the most profound ritual that you've ever done?
You mean now in that space as we're here?
In this space, in their own space, in any space.
Okay, well, in the space you're all in, the most profound thing you could all do is turn to somebody you don't know and hug them. Really, smile.
Can we do it now?
I love you, Jen.
Oh, thank you.
I don't know if you can see, but a few hundred hugs just went down.
And of course, and this is not a plug to buy the book, the online if you want to cheat, but the ritual, particularly the three liquids, is the most profound, simple, magical ritual anyone can do. You know, Austin Osman Spare was another person that we discovered, and his contribution was the idea that at the moment of orgasm, all the different types of consciousness in somebody, deep consciousness, subconsciousness, everyday consciousness, all the different fucking names, all of them, for that moment, are all opened up to each other. They become one moment. And in that moment, you can program, reprogram, and direct all those minds to always choose things that you want to have happen in the future. And they'll do it without you being aware of it. And that's the simplest thing. And the great thing about that ritual is the worst that can happen is you have an orgasm. You're a great believer in magic should be pleasurable. Okay.
Do you have any other questions?
Hi, Jen.
Hi.
Thank you for your work and your life. Love it. How, I guess, like, how do you make love stay? How do you keep that going? Especially, like, with the idea of identity and constantly changing. How can you, like, hold on to things as you keep changing every day? Especially when you keep discarding old identities. How do you...
What is it to hold on to? Why are we trying to hold on to something while we're giving it all away? That's a contradiction. I don't understand your question.
Well, I mean, like, I remember a quote, I think it was by you, but it was like about how, like, there's enough identities to keep changing every day.
Oh, that was like, yeah.
How...
Never people to be, that's right.
Right, yeah. That one. If you keep changing into, like, different people, and I feel like it's sometimes inevitable, it can be an act of choice, but it's definitely, like, inevitability of being alive. How do you, like, consolidate that without, like, letting go of all things, I guess? Like, that's kind of a weird question.
You do the best you can. You know, we're all flawed. None of us are perfect. None of us are always able to do the things that we believe it would be wonderful to do, but you do the best you can. And just knowing that you could be somebody every single day is really the important part of that statement. Not that you literally do it, although you'd be surprised how many people change who they are every day. It's very subtle, but they do. It's knowing that that's one of the possibilities. It's knowing that the shapes of this universe are not what we're told. That in fact it's always in a state of flux. There is nothing fixed. There is nothing definite. There is nothing that... And that scares people, you know. And it never scared me. We always felt comfortable in chaos, in its broadest sense, in its scientific sense. You know, we always felt uncomfortable when we were defined and pinned down or expected to behave in consistent ways that were no longer relevant. What was consistent to do 30 years ago is now a completely pointless thing to do. the situations change, the environment changes, the dynamics of society change, and we're supposed to change with them. Our strategies should also change. They should always be about subverting the, well, what's that word? When everything just stops and becomes one. It's one of those clever scientific words. It's like the opposite of symbiosis or something. What's it called? It's on the tip of my little tongue. And I can't remember what it is.
Singularity?
We have some votes here for singularity.
You know, that's the word. So you've got to keep avoiding inertia. You've got to keep what's happening dynamic. You've got to be ready to accept change. You've got to be able to walk away from what you think is important or that you treasure. For instance, when we were told by Scotland Yard and our civil liberties lawyers, if you come back to England, we cannot guarantee your physical safety. And my lawyer said, what are you saying to Scotland Yard? Are you saying that somebody might kill Jen? And they said, yes, exactly. Genesis isn't safe if Jen comes back. And so we had two houses at that point, and a record label and a book publishing company and all this amazing stuff going on. Both those houses are now worth over £1 million. But we let them go for the freedom of still saying what we believe, and came to America with 2 kids and a suitcase.
Not easy.
What matters is that you've got to avoid that trick of anchoring yourself with stuff. We keep stuff, little things, but they usually become art, or else they get thrown out or given away. But we keep it all in one. We live in one room, you know. We live a very frugal life, and we like it that way. Because, as they say, there's nothing you can take with you. People talk about legacy. I go, I'm not going to give a shit about my legacy. I won't be here. You know, I'll either in oblivion, or I'll be off with Jay in another universe having fun, whichever. But I'm not going to care what's happening here. That's down to you. That's your job next. We've done our job.
Thank you for doing the job.
Hi, Jen. It's Kat from New Orleans. I have a question for you.
Oh, hey, how are you? I've still got your blood ritual, your sigil.
Oh, I'd love to see that. Thank you. I'm wondering if you could do one very big sigil, one, whether it ends in a glorious orgasm or not. What would that sigil, what would your intention be? What would you like to create with one big last sigil?
Community.
You created that. What would you like to happen with that community?
It's not big enough yet. A community that is like a think tank. So, like a village, everybody has their own space, their own privacy. Then there's a big house or building that's got archives and resources in it, and that's a place that people can come and be reactivated and re-inspired, or reactivate and re-inspire the people who are there. And it's a sort of circulating population, not like a commune. It's a resource, a think tank that's there to keep charging and inspiring and pushing the envelope for everybody else in the community. That's what we'd like to see. And in terms of human species, the humane species, we've been thinking of it lately a bit like an amoeba. You know, if you have a simple creature like an amoeba, if part of it gets damaged or hurt, it will use whatever resources it has inside it to fix that damage, because it's in the best interest of the organism. And the same would apply to nutrients. If one part of it is missing nutrients, it will reassign other nutrients to where they're needed because it's in the best interest of the organism. Now, if we think of the humane species as one organism, which personally we do, then if we started to make decisions about that organism, just like an amoeba, wherever anything is damaged or hurt, whether it be a society or a famine or anything, always we would supply what was needed to heal it. The same with nutrients, if people were starving. And once that process begins, there's no need for nations, there's no need for wars, there's no need for anything except healing and sharing and kindness and going into space and starting to have a look around.
Yeah. Hippie.
So that would be the biggest of all, I guess. How are you, Kat?
We'll talk later.
Okay.
Jen, thank you so much for your time. We'll talk to you tomorrow. We love you.
Love you, Jen.
Thank you, all of you, for giving all of yourself to us tonight, Jen. We love you. Thank you.
Love you.
And thank you, Wes, for being here and bringing us through this journey together. It was tremendous. And we invite you all now to go over to Lethal Amounts to see the other half of the exhibition. It's on the back of your gallery guide. There's a map, so you can see the big part of the show over there. Thank you all. Good night, love.